Syrian opposition has suspended formal talks in Geneva as rebels launch a new offensive against regime forces. Moments ago, the chief negotiator of the Syrian High Negotiations Committee, Riyad Hajib, held a press conference to explain the situation.
We
will not accept negotiations while our people are still suffering. We cannot accept to be in negotiations in Geneva where our people are dying out of hunger under bombardment. And we cannot be part of a process which will waste the rights of our people and increase the suffering of our nation.
Well, Dominic Valitis joins us live from Geneva with more on what happened. What else did he have to say, Dominic?
Well, of course, it was yesterday, wasn't it, that announcement was made that the HNC was going to postpone its participation in these talks. And we heard from Riyad Hijab earlier on, who was putting a little bit more meat on the bones as to why that decision was taken. First and foremost, the allegation that the Syrian regime has been violating the cessation of hostilities deal that was brokered by the Russians and the Americans back in February. There was also some talk about the regime using siege tactics as well, and how people have been starving to death. And the issue of detainees was brought up here as another issue as to why talks were postponed. The HNC pointing to the fact that since this conflict has begun, the regime actually hasn't released a single detainee. Now, taken as a whole, those reasons are why the HNC has decided to postpone its participation in these talks. It says they are a violation of Syrians' rights. Assad, it said, is guilty of crimes worse than the Nazis. Here's a little more of what Riyad Hijab had to say earlier.
Dominic, I have another question for you with regards to Bashar al-Assad. As I understand it from the meeting, he said there'll be no solution with him in power. He's dreaming.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And to be fair, that is the position that the HNC has taken since day one, pretty much, of these talks here in Geneva. In terms of what happens next, some members of the HNC delegation will be remaining here in Geneva for the rest of the week. But what they'll be doing is taking part in some of the more peripheral meetings that happen here in Geneva, meetings about humanitarian issues and so on. They've actually even invited the UN Special Envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, to take part as a technical expert in those meetings. But as far as the indirect talks, the negotiations, the indirect negotiations with the Syrian government, they are now officially postponed.
OK, Dominic Valitis in Geneva, thank you.